I think the biggest things that come to mind with what was wrong with the show were the like doing too much in such little time, rushing it.
Right.
And one such thing was definitely they. I've already expressed this to them while we were watching the show, but spoilers again. The lightning bending from Azula, and honestly, maybe just Azula's whole relationship with Ozai. I just, oh man, they dropped the airball on that one. I just,
Man,
what,
we talked about
why?
when we were watching the show. Azula was also one of my favorite characters, and it's funny because I'm not even like a Fire Nation kind of guy, but I find myself identifying with the Fire Nation characters quite a bit, whether it's Ozai, Zuko, Iroh, or Azula.
Okay.
And Azula, again, was one of my favorite characters in the animated series.
Yeah.
And when it came to the portrayal, I just didn't like the take that they went with the portrayal of Azula. Like we talked about last night, she seemed more petty, and in the animated series, she's way more cunning and intelligent.
Cold, calculating,
Sinister. And this, she just seemed like...
Oh, Dad, or
Like a
Ozai's
little-
giving Zuko attention, so I need to do things to get attention too. Lightning. And
Right, it seemed just like a sibling rivalry versus her actually gunning for the throne.
Yeah, I'm trying to conquer the world with my fire. Like,
And that's what I was talking about when it came to like earned payoffs. Like you can get to the end point of her being the leader of the battalion, but you have to show us in the earlier part of the season her being that excellent militaristic leader. Like we saw how Zuko, he made the wrong decision when it came to, well, from the Fire Nation's perspective, the wrong decision.
Azula, constantly formidable. Pardon me.
In the animated show. But we didn't see that. When we saw her in the live action, she messed up in terms of her combat skills, and then she was her strategy, Ozai saw directly through it, where she was trying to position herself against her brother versus actually creating a good strategy. And it's when Ozai was saying, well, Zuko was the one who found the avatar, Azula. Stop trying to be coy.
Coy whispers and self-flattery.
And that's just, that didn't seem like authentic to the actual Azula.
Sorry, but in speaking of Azula, Azula is bye-bye Zuzu, you're disregarded. Like, bye-bye Zuzu, like I don't even need you. Like, you're not even a motivating factor for me.
Yeah, she shouldn't be super concerned with what Zuko's doing with the Avatar because she has her sights set on something bigger. But it seemed like in the live-action adaptation, they pitted them one against the other a little too much for me.
Yeah.
And even with the lightning thing, like, again, we talked about it in our breakdown or in our initial reaction last night. I think the lightning should be way more earned, but it, like you said, it seemed a little too rushed.
Like they were just like, oh look, now we can do lightning too. It's like, really?
It'd be different if Azula had perfect blue fire at the beginning of the series, because that shows that she's an exceptional firebender.
Which she is.
Versus what we got was she still has a lot to learn. Isn't wrong, but that doesn't mean you can show that she can accomplish a pretty tough task of lightning bending by the end of the show just because she was a little mad. I don't think that narratively works out very well.
No, I hated it. Oh, call me a Fire Nation like soldier because I'm burning up because it ain't good, man. That was so lame.
What about you, Jager? I know you like the show a lot more than I did in terms of your impression of the show, but is there anything that you would say that you didn't like about the live action adaptation?
You know, I think I'm crazily in a similar place to you both. I feel like when in regards, and especially stemming from Azula right now, is we have so much characterization and I don't know if notoriety is the right word to use for the other characters, but then for Azula, it's like so watered down. See, in the animated series, we're introduced to Azula as already, but then we have to develop our team avatar.
Right.
But then in the live action series, it was almost as if team avatar is already like, okay, we're getting to it. But then Azula is also getting to it instead of
Azula's
team avatar.
there.
Who's that?
Yeah.
And with the live action series, we see, especially for myself, in already seeing the animated series, I think the live action branched off from the animated series, but from knowing the animated series, it was a necessity to adapt to. Okay, that happened later, but we're experiencing it right now. So what are they going to do with it? And in reacting to that, I just place myself as an audience member. Like, okay, this is a completely different creative endeavor.
Yeah.
Now let's see what they do with it.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, it's this happened, like that. But now it's all right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to use the word rushed because I can understand that it's hard from a directive standpoint, from a writer standpoint, for so many people to consume. And I feel like this directly correlates with how different Azula's character is in the animated series to the live action series, especially with how we see in the animated series Azula's perfect blue fire. And imagine how traumatizing, and imagine how much success that she had to have accomplished before we even are introduced to Azula, to have that blue fire, to have the extension of lightning already.
Yeah.
And that's what made the flashbacks for Zuko so valuable, because we see the reasons why we're introduced to this abrasive, arrogant, harsh character, but then we see the reasoning behind in the later episodes that got him to this point. So narratively that works when you're telling the story.
Yeah.
And then even for Aang, the moment I liked about Aang was that he was too powerful and he almost killed a few other airbenders. I love that part. But then again, like we talked about, when it came to where you start, where we see the character, where we're first introduced to them, and then where they end up at the end of the show, some of them had great arcs. To me, that was Zuko. Iroh we didn't see much change in him outside of like what we in hearsay know that he's like this legendary, brutal Dragon of the West guy, but now he's the almost pacifist kind of guy.
Like a constant
Calming.
Yeah, constant conscience.
But we know that, like, not every character has to go through this grandiose arc of change.
Yeah.
But for the characters that we see, some of them I think they executed well versus others.